Cool. Excellent, guys. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. Look, if you want to get truly healthy, there's some actions you're going to have to take. And the one thing we all have, hands up if you don't, some stress in your life.
My black doesn't work on my pen.
Look, if you didn't have stress, you really wouldn't have been here, okay? And tonight we're going to go through two aspects of stress. We're going to go through what stress is, but also how does it affect your body. And then at the end, we're going to show you some techniques that I use myself on a daily basis to handle stress to a greater extent. All of you here are undergoing some form of chiropractic care at the moment. And chiropractic, plays a central component into how you deal with stress. So we'll certainly be covering some of that, but the focus is more what you can do in your own lives other than the adjustments to deal with stress. So let's dive in. The first one, what is stress? Well, to put it simple, stress is a response the body has to a stimulus, okay? Most of us believe stress to be when we are emotionally stressed, but that's not just the case. Emotional stress is literally just one aspect of stress. There is the physical component and there's also a chemical component. We'll deal with those in a little bit. Essentially, stress is something that is unavoidable. If you actually didn't have stress in your life, you wouldn't be alive. Because the body needs stress to survive. You actually have two nervous systems in your body, one that speeds things up and one that slows things down. And so it's the stressful events that determines what nervous system needs to be active at one time, but also in the body, certain events, things like digestion, heart rate, blood pressure, will require these nervous systems to determine which one needs to be active and which one needs to be calm. So when we're dealing with physical, emotional and chemical stress, what we're really looking at is our life. Because our life inherently is stressful, especially in today's society. We're doing more hours, we're doing longer hours, we make less money half the time, okay? We have more commitments than ever before. All the while, we actually get less time to look for after ourselves. But I want you to know that stress is not pathological or bad. Stress in itself is not bad. What is really bad is if that stress is sustained over a long period of time. Because the body has to adapt to that stress. And if it doesn't adapt to that stress, then there's going to be some consequences as well. And we'll cover that in a moment. Stress is not depression, and nor is it the cause of depression. We've covered this in previous workshops, but depression is essentially where your values that you have personally are not being met, but you also have no idea how to change it. That's depression. Stress is just a response to a stimulus. So Dr. James Chestnut came up with this awesome analogy. It's called the backpack analogy, to help you understand how stress affects your life. Imagine you were born with a backpack on, okay, from birth. And you're floating in a pool with this backpack, and around your arms are two floaties, okay? Those floaties have a self-destruct after about 120 years, okay? So they're leaking air constantly, and after about 120 years you would just sink. That's your genetic potential, 120 years. Every stressful event that you encounter is like a rock that goes into your backpack. When a rock goes into your backpack, you're going to have to work harder. And you're going to work harder to stay afloat. And also because there's more stress in the body and you're weighed down, those floaties are going to leak air faster. So you're going to start losing some time off this 120 years. Every little bit of stress is going to affect your body in some way. It's how we deal with that stress and whether or not we're actually emptying out those backpacks on a daily basis. That determines literally our not only quality but certainly our quantity of life. And so when you listen to tonight and you start learning about stress, it's a serious event because it will determine whether or not you're going to make changes in your body that are going to help you live longer or whether you're going to remain ignorant and let these stressful events sink you. All right, let's go a little bit more into the stress response, okay? When you encounter a stress, now whether it's your mother yelling at you, your boss yelling at you, your husband yelling at you, or you ate something that didn't agree with your body, or whether you had a car accident, you had a fall, your bills are due, your mortgage is due, all of those stresses are the same to the body. The body doesn't react differently to different stresses. And so every stressful event triggers the same response. It's just unavoidable. The first thing it does is it triggers something called the fight-flight response, or it activates your nervous system. And when it activates a nervous system, it activates something in your brain called your hypothalamus. Just understand that the hypothalamus stimulates your adrenals. You probably have heard of the adrenals, okay? When you get that adrenaline rush, you feel like, woo, okay? And the adrenaline and cortisol is released as a hormone. That's a bit you need to remember. That stress releases cortisol and adrenaline. Don't remember the pathways. Most chiropractors don't. Just remember that stress releases cortisol.
It's obvious when the hypothalamus is up here.
Yes. These hormones speed up heart rate, breathing rate, blood pressure, and metabolism. Basically the 5 pillars of our chronic illness in today's society. See, it's not the stressful event that is a problem, but if you sustain that all day, every day for years, let's think about it. If we've got a high heart rate, what's the heart doing? Is it working harder or slower? Harder, exactly. Now, the heart is a muscle. When you work a muscle hard, what happens to the muscle? It grows, okay? And when it grows, it becomes hypertrophied and it actually becomes quite ill. How many people are dying of heart disease in today's society?
42%.
It's a phenomenal lot. It's actually more up to 60% now. When you group heart disease into one bracket.
Cardiomyopathy, enlargement of the heart, 42%.
Yes. So just that one. Breathing rate goes up. If you're breathing really fast, what's happened to your oxygen supply? Is it high or low? Lower, exactly, because the oxygen doesn't stay in your lungs. It goes in and out really fast, so it doesn't get proper time to diffuse into the body. What do you think happens if your tissues don't get enough oxygen? Are they going to work well or poorly? Poorly, exactly. Blood pressure, if it goes up all the time, we know how many pills are sold every day on high blood pressure. A phenomenal amount. It's amazing. Metabolism, when we start thinking about diabetes, you know, kids are waking up with, or not waking up, they're starting to be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. The cause of type 2 diabetes, the main cause is obesity. Okay? And obesity is a scary thing because it's costing the country billions and billions of dollars. The liver also releases glucose into the blood for extra energy. Now, what happens if you've got a lot of blood sugar? That's basically the definition of diabetes. Okay? Increased nociceptive. What that basically means is your body detects pain more sensitively. Okay? It's more aware of things that aren't quite as they should be. The problem is though, things like your emotional center of the brain, the amygdala, okay, at the same time decreases your focus, decreases your sex drive, decreases your digestion. It also lowers your immunity. Let's talk about immunity for a sec. I've said this many times. If you're at a water hole and you see a tiger, what do? Do you stay or do you run? You run, exactly. Now, while you're running, if you cut yourself and the tiger's still chasing you, what's more important, healing the wound or getting away? Getting away. And that's the simplest way I can tell you that immune systems are dropped without going into technical details. Your emotional memory is actually very high. Ability to sleep is very poor. Okay? So if you allow stress to remain a big part of your life, it will kill you. 80% of the adults in the Western world are living with a chronic illness. It's costing us up to $500 million per day. Chronic illness. Just think, chronic illnesses are nearly always preventable. So $500 million of your money is being thrown into the garbage, essentially, by people not addressing their lifestyle issues or their stress-related issues.